NatRevMD, a podcast where we share tips on optimizing medical billing and improving practice efficiency so you can have the business of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli, founder of NatRevMD. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome back to another week of the NatRevMD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli. And here this week, I'm really excited to have a guest with us who has a wealth of experience, both on the clinical side, but really on the healthcare leadership side. With that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Matt Astin. So Dr. Astin is a board certified ED internal medicine physician, dual board certified really, and holds a whole bunch of credentials, both MBA, MPH, but really just has had a wealth of experience, both as a department chair, medical director, regional medical director, and also in education. And so with that, Dr. Astin, please introduce yourself. Tell us your background. I'm sure I butchered some of it.
That's good. Thanks for having me. Like I said, double board certified in emergency medicine and internal medicine. I did my residency training at East Carolina University. All of my other degrees came from Mercer University, so that's kind of where I'm at now. Like I said, I've been the medical director of multiple emergency departments around the state of Georgia, including some hospitalist medicine sides as well. Currently, I work in the emergency department at Atrium Health Navicine in Macon. That is my primary job, but I'm also the medical director of the Macon Volunteer Clinic, which is a multi-specialty primary care clinic. That takes up a lot of time, but I'm also the medical director of the Central Georgia Technical College Paramedic Program, the medical director of the Mercer University Master of Athletic Training Program, where I teach. I'm also the team physician for Mercer University and the team physician for the Macon Mayhem hockey team. Yes, we have hockey in Central Georgia.
I love it. And so do you sleep too with all that?
Yes, I have to block out the time on the calendar before sleep, but yes, it happens.
Fair enough. Okay, good, good. Check. I think one of the hardest things is, in medical school, regardless of where you trained or what you trained in, we're not really given, I would say, the traditional tools in order to learn how to lead people, learn how to deal with the financial aspects of healthcare. So in your roles, where did you get that sort of experience? Was it just figuring it out, trial by fire, or did you have mentors along the way?
A lot of it was the trial by fire. And not so much the trial by fire as the getting thrown into the fire and realizing the deficiencies and then actively seeking them out. Like I say, going through the background, I got my MPH before I was a physician. So
Okay.
I finished med school in 2006. I got my MPH in 2001. I didn't get my MBA until 2022. So that was one of those things where, backing up as far as the leadership, a lot of people ask the question, are leaders born or are they made? And when I get asked that question, the answer is yes. Yes.
Yes.
In my case, I feel like I've had leadership proclivity my entire life. I wanted to be, the head of this. I was the president of all kinds of clubs and schools and even in residency, I was on the resident council. It was a 5-year program, but I was the president of that council for 2 years. So just like you have, sports analogy, you have a fantastic athlete. They have natural ability. But this goes the same with leadership. If you don't train that ability, you don't, develop it, it's not going to happen. How many, football players have you heard that have this fantastic ability, but they never make it because they don't put the work in? You hear the saying from this, like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Well, when talent does work hard, get out of the way.
Well, and it's funny because I think, a lot of our listeners, whether they've been in traditional, employment practices or own their own private practice, it's like finding the time to hone a skill when you're seeing patients, when you're maybe, running a business or running a department like you talk about it. So it's like, but I think what you're saying is you almost just, you have to force and make the time to put in the work and put in the effort.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Just like, if you're working clinically, and you're seeing patients, if you come across something that you're not exactly familiar with, you look it up and you learn about it. Same thing on the leadership side, on the business side. If you come across something you're not, quite versed in, you have to seek it out and become knowledgeable about it. It may not have the same life or death, consequences as patient care, but on the same side, there are life and death consequences about your business. So you have to put the work in. You have to make the time to put the work in if you are wanting to be in a leadership position.
And I think, whether that's owning your own practice and knowing that there are certain business things you have to get done, right? You have to measure the metrics. You have to follow up with them. You have to have the team huddles. You have to do all of the things in order to impact the measures that you're the metrics that you're measuring.
Yeah. And that's one of the deficiencies in medical school training right now. There's really no business leadership side to it. It's all the clinical side of it. I didn't get any business related financial education, except I had one guest speaker come in when I was a resident, but that was all about personal finance. It wasn't running a practice. It wasn't, anything like that. So,
or managing people.
Managing people. Yes.
Because I assume in your roles, you're managing people in probably different capacities, whether that be physicians or non-physician leaders. What would you say is the number one thing you've learned when managing humans, so to speak?
Well, yeah, the number one thing is one size does not fit all. My leadership style will morph into whatever style it needs to be to get the message across, to get the outcome that needs to happen. And that is something that I've learned over the years that I've done this.
Yeah, it's sort of like children. I have two children. They're 12 and 10. And my son will always tell me, well, you do it different for her than for him. And I try and explain that exact principle, that they each need different things, right? I have to teach them different ways because they are different children.
Different people.
And they're different people. And so I have found, I've had in my roles up to 8,000 people rolling up through me. I have found that exactly what you said, that there are, depending on the outcome that you're trying to get to, there are different ways depending on the type of person, the type of role, their executive level of functioning, right? So everybody has that. Again, you could have two physicians and their ability to kind of understand where we're going and how to get there can be very different. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And then that is one of the keys of leadership, is identifying those around you that potentially have the ability to take some of that off of your plate. As a leader, we need to have the space, the mental capacity to look ahead the thing about a leader is the vision to move forward. Well, I can't do those things if I am always looking down at the minutia of what's happening. So, being able to work with people in different ways, but at the same time identifying who has that ability to help.
Well, and that brings up a good point, right? So say you're running a practice or a department and you have the end goal, whether that's a revenue goal, whether that's a quality, metric that you're measuring, you have some endpoint that you're trying to get to. I think recognizing a potential path to get there, but then who are the individuals who are going to help you execute? Because if you're the person who's sitting at the top trying to do all of the work, you're never going to get there. And again, this could be a solo practitioner who's running a practice by themselves and trying to figure out how to manage the front office, the finances, the billing, whatever it is, or a person who's a department lead trying to get to sepsis or core measures all the way down to turnaround times and length of stay. Really the task is still the same.
Yeah, you've got to have that end goal in mind. So if you know where you're going, that's where the rubber meets the road, is to figuring out how to get there and who to help you get there.
And so if you're talking to, maybe it's residents or maybe it's a new physicians who are out there kind of running their own practice for the first time, where can we help them when they're starting out in leadership for the first time, right? Again, whether that's a new department or a new practice that they're running, but is there one or two tips that you can say, okay, if you do this, it's going to help you get and learn that experience? Because again, it's going to take time, I think, regardless.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely going to take time. Well, the two things, the first two things that came to mind was, number one is they're not alone. If I'm putting them in a new leadership position, I need to make sure they know they can come to me when they have questions, because they will. And so make sure that door is open. The second thing is, you hear this all the time, that over communication is not possible. And, especially for a new leader, that is true. You cannot over communicate things. When people start complaining about you communicating too much, you're probably getting close to the sweet spot.
We were talking actually earlier today on a different meeting, and we were talking about over communicating and how we think that when you do communicate, only 10% of it is heard or listened to. And whether that's 10% of the people or the audience or 10% of the material. And so that's why you communicate 10 times as much as you think you should, to get to that 100%. And again, these are made up numbers just out of experience, but you just keep hammering it. And so I think, again, for the listeners, say you're running a practice or a department, it's really understanding what are your touch points with your employees. Again, those people that are doing the execution on your behalf, or with your leaders on understanding the expectation on, or with, your, finance leaders, understanding where the finances are at the time. I mean, it's really understanding where do your touch points, both up the chain and down the food chain.
Right. Yeah, it's not only communicating the vision, communicating the endpoint, especially your other leaders, both up and down, that need to know what their checkpoints are. What are the business term is KPI, key performance indicators. If they don't know, they need to know where their ultimate goal is, but they have to maybe be able to chart their progress along the way.
Yeah. So. And sharing that with folks, I think one of the things you can see division is the leader may know where the practice needs to go or the department needs to go. And maybe they're communicating some of that, but not all of it. And so it's that constant touch point. Because I think in general, people show up to work, they want to do what's right. They want to do a good job, but they have to know where they're going, how to do it, and who's there to support them.
Yeah, a lot of times the CEO of a business, whatever, chief executive officer, they really need to be the chief echo officer, repeating those things over and over again so everybody knows the path that you're on.
I like that. Chief echo officer. I like that. Did you create that term yourself? I like that. I've not heard that before.
I don't think so. It may, it's been echoing in my head. I just don't know where it came from.
Fair enough. So, okay. So let's take a physician. Maybe they're in a leadership role running a practice and they're struggling. They're seeing patients 5 days a week. How do you help those individuals find the time? I mean, is it truly you just got to block the time and do it? Or how do folks figure out how to fit in the administrative side of medicine, which is here. Like it is here for anybody who's in any sort of leadership role or practice ownership role. How do you fit it in?
Well, one of the key, the big misconceptions across all of our society is the idea of balance, work-life balance. Well, if you keep everything in balance all the time, it's not going to happen. You can't do it. There are going to be times where you will not be able to do one thing that you want to do. So you have to identify the time that this needs to happen. You realize it has to be done. And so if you have the time to put that administrative stuff on your calendar, great. It's got to be done until you can get to a point where things get a little bit streamlined, a little bit faster, then you have more time for other things. If you realize that this has to be done, but you don't have the time, that's where you got to start looking about bringing somebody in to help. Whether it's the front office, whether it's another provider to see patients while you take care of the business. So it's that identify and humility to realize you can't do it all by yourself all the time.
Yeah. And I think, again, it goes back to where are you trying to go, right? So if you're running a practice, what is it that you need financially in order to break even or hit a profit goal? And then who do you need to help take off all of the things on your plate in order to get there? Or if you're running a department and you've got to get, folks moving in the right direction, then if you're not seeing those patients, how are you going to balance or who are you going to use to balance meeting those metrics?
Yeah, and that goes to the idea of actually taking the time to visualize where you want to be. And once you have that goal, then realistically have to look and see, is it possible with what I have now? And if it's not, what do I need? And can I get that? And if those things don't line up, you may have to circle back and reestablish what that vision is. Bring it down a notch or two. So.
I think that brings up a good point. We're not taught how to do a business case in medical school, but I will say this is probably one of the most needed skill sets as a physician, especially a physician leader. Again, whether you're employed or in private practice, really understanding, again, like you said, what is your goal? Why are we achieving or trying to achieve this goal? I think that's one piece we often overlook is what is the problem we're trying to solve? And is this solution going to solve it? And then understanding, okay, what's the cost to get us there? How does that change from what we're currently spending? And again, that's a business case to open a practice. That's a business case to bring in a new, physician or provider or, really understanding the business case piece. I find that we really overlook and we close our eyes and just hope and pray that it's all going to go okay versus really sitting down and painfully writing. And now with AI, I mean, I feel like you can like write a business case in hot minute.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You put the right prompts in and it'll spit it out right out at you.
Right.
But I would also make the argument that that type of learning how to do that is beneficial for your life in general.
Yes.
So you have to look at that. And you mentioned starting with Why, the book by Simon Sinek. Start with why. Figure out why you want to do this. The saying is, if you know what your why is, you can get through anyhow.
Yeah.
Knowing why you're doing it, that will allow you to make the different cases about what we're going to do. Do I really need to do this? How can I do this? Figure out how to do it, or change.
And then prioritize. I think that's the other piece that we oftentimes overlook is you come up with, okay, this is my goal. But if you don't really outline, okay, what are the things I need to do in order to hit that goal? And then how is that going to be prioritized? Because back to your balance comment earlier, there is no such thing as balance. It's just prioritization. What are you prioritizing today versus this week versus this month? And that may mean half day on Saturday if you're working 5 times, if you're working clinically 5 days a week. And yeah, that may not be a forever situation, but that may be what's necessary to keep the doors open and to grow the practice in the beginning or to manage the department. And again, that shouldn't be a forever thing. You've got to come up, you got to dig out of that eventually. But there's a period of time where that just may be necessary.
Yeah, the prioritization is a key thing. You have all the steps, but what is the next best thing to do? Your next action, and not only identifying what the next action is, looking ahead a step or two just to know what's coming up, to make sure that everything is in place when that comes up. Whether that's some kind of resource, whether that's a person.
Yeah, I think again that's inches you closer to delegation as you get down that path. All right. So my last question is, you've obviously, been in multiple different, leadership roles, mentoring and developing, future physician leaders. What's one thing that you wish we could teach doctors maybe earlier in school, in medical school, really, that you hope to share with the listeners?
Well, the big thing is the humility to communicate. And that's not just spitting things out, but the communication part, the listening part of communication. So being able to listen to feedback, listen to, coworkers, listening to your bosses, taking that information and constructively using that to make improvements. We get taught how to listen to patients. Some do that better than others, but focusing on how to do that, the listening aspect of communication is something that I would say that if I had a little bit more of that at the beginning of my career, I would be even further than I am now.
I like that. Yeah. And I think that's hard because I feel like in medical school, you're almost shamed if you give a wrong answer, and you're humiliated at times. And so you get this fear of being wrong or being, I guess, wrong. I mean, I think that's the word I would use,
Yeah, we're taught to ask questions, but it's always a fact-finding question. When did your symptoms start? How long have they been going on? We don't ask the questions of, I don't know this. How do I look for this? What do I need to get this? We're afraid to do that because we don't want to show that we don't know. Because patients are coming to us for the answers. And so we have this false thought that if we show that we don't know, then our patients won't trust us. I have personally found, in the emergency room, I don't know anything about these patients other than what they tell me and what I can figure out through this electronic medical record. But if I tell them that this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm thinking, or on the backside, after I get all my diagnostics back, if I don't know, I'll tell them, I don't know what's going on, but I know that it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. All right. So I tell them that's my thing is to, in the emergency room, what can kill you and prove that's not it. And I have found that I get a little bit more respect from those patients by saying, I don't know this, but this is what I do know. And providing them reassurance that, hey, this is our next step to try and figure this out together.
And I think that translates into the business world too, because you can say, okay, here's what I know. Here's where we're going. Here's what we've tried that's worked or didn't work. And here's some other ideas that we can figure out together and as we go on this journey. Because again, that could be a quality metric, could be a financial metric, whatever it is. But I think if you have that with your team, they're going to be more receptive to maybe changing courses or being asked to do something differently. Because that's always hard, right? Because you're asking your team to change a process that they may not understand why we're changing. But again, it's showing, hey, this is what I don't know. This is what I know. Here, we're going to be figuring this out together.
Yeah, and that goes back to the communication aspect of it. If you put out there what you don't know this, but this is what you do know. If you have that relationship and that trust and that communication with your team, they may know something that you don't. They may have that missing piece of the puzzle to get things completed.
I like that. And a lot of our time is spent educating front office staff. And again, it's just not been something that, the physician leaders have had the time to do. And so, and it is really important because again, we all have to be marching in the same direction, understanding the same things and understanding what's worked and not worked together. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I've really enjoyed, I appreciate you agreeing to be on. I mean, I think as physicians trying to come together and share resources and things that were just not taught in medical school, just hoping that those of us that are earlier in their journey can get there faster. So I appreciate you taking the time and just spending some time with us. If listeners want to find you and learn more about you and follow you in the leadership world, how can they find you?
Sure. Well, be reached by email. It's Matt Astin, MattastinMD @gmail.com. But I'm also on X or Instagram. Both are at AstinMD.
Great. And we'll put those links in the show notes. I appreciate it.
Thank you.